Welcome to another episode of the Empowered Half Hour. And I'm already getting excited to tell you who today's guest is. It is Siri Lindley. And I'm going to read her official bio because you're going to find out. If you don't know the name, you're going to find out how awesome she is. But I want to share why I think she's awesome and why I brought her on this podcast. She is my life coach. I'm in her group coaching programs. And I first saw Siri Lindley speak at a Tony Robbins event, and your joy, well, she's here, but I'm talking about her. But her joy was palpable. I felt like it permeated my skin and I couldn't stop smiling, and it gave me deep reflection, but it made me want to reach for that like unlimited potential in myself, which I'm so deeply passionate about. And so then I started like saying, hey, following her on social media, joined her coaching groups. And now she's here on the podcast because she's releasing a book. And I'm just going to say hi real fast. Hi, Siri.
Hi, Becca. And Becca, I just adore you. You already know that. You are such a beautiful beacon of light in this world.
Thank you.
And I'm so grateful to have the honor and privilege of working together with you and playing some small role in your journey. So I'm thrilled to be here, thrilled to meet your people. So
Yes.
Thanks for having me.
Awesome. So I'm going to take a quick segue to read your bio so people can hear all about you, and then we're going to get started. All right. So Siri Lindley, if you don't recognize her name, you might after I'm done with the bio. She is a 2-time world champion triathlete and winner of 12 ITU World Cup races. 12, that's a lot. I did not know that. She retired as the #1 ranking triathlete in the world, a place that she held for more than 2 years. Today, as the top female triathlon coach in the world, she guided Olympic medalists and Ironman champions to not only become better athletes, but also better people. Siri is also a highly acclaimed life coach, which I mentioned before, and one of Tony Robbins' 10 favorite motivational speakers. With an infectious and authentic passion, she empowers audiences to strive for peak performance and to work through and ultimately conquer the demons of fear and self-doubt. I'm already fired up. Welcome again, Siri.
Thank you so much, Becca. I'm truly thrilled to be here. So thank you for having me.
So let's jump into it because this bad boy is only 30 minutes long. So tell me about Finding a Way. You're about ready to release. Is this your first book? I believe so.
It's my second book, but for some reason, this feels like the book. It is so deeply important to me. I wrote it, and your listeners don't know this, but I survived a very small chance with acute myeloid leukemia, and living this miracle of life and being able to breathe and to be here, I felt like I really want to do something that's going to really matter. And I think one of the deep, profound things that I realized as I was sick and kind of fighting this disease was that at that point in my life, I had finally found my freedom. My freedom from my disempowering stories, freedom from my anxiety, freedom from all the pains that every single human being on this planet has. And how did I do that? And how did I have things in my life that at one point seemed impossible, but were now realities in my life? Like, how did I do that? Because I started thinking that should I somehow be blessed with a miracle and I get to live this life for a little bit longer? How can I touch as many lives as I can? Because that's always kind of been why I feel I'm here on this planet. And I thought, well, I am going to figure out, I'm going to unravel and kind of peel back all the years and the how-to of how I arrived, especially overcoming this disease. And so this book is all about, I want to help every single person who reads it find their freedom. I want every single human being to know that they get to choose what story in life they want to live. And this is how you do it. But I'm not going to tell you it. You got to figure it out on your own. And this big book will guide you on how to do that. And that's super important.
I love that so much because it's in the how-to. And when you have something like a miraculous turnaround from cancer and so many other accomplishments that you've had in your life, people start to ask you, how do you do it? And sometimes, I know for me, like I have a different story, as you know, but still I'm a peak performer. I normally crush any goal I set. And people are like, how do you do that? I'm in the process too of unpacking my how-to because it's been innate. And the only reason I bring that up is because I think it's the piece that I feel is missing right now. in the world of personal development, there's a lot of good one-liners and things to do, but how do you really transform from the inside out so that you are living in that space of joy and gratitude to the point that, like I say, it oozes off of you. It's contagious. And I can tell that you own it, you know?
Well, here's the thing, and this is what I think is so important. This book isn't about like, I did this and I accomplished this and I didn't suffer and there's no pain and here I am, a huge success. I think that what this world needs are the honest stories, the vulnerable stories. Like, I really suffered. I have been in the darkness. I have been where you are, because I want every reader to see the possibility of themselves in me. And the only way we can do that with another person is to know that their journey was speckled with failures and doubt and fear and all the things that we experience on a daily basis. Like, this is a reality. I think on social media, so often we see, and it's those one-liners, do this and your life's going to be amazing, or people that are up there and they're huge successes and they're not talking about what it really took to get there. Because the fact of the matter is, everyone, that overcoming a great challenge is hard. It's going to bring you to your knees. But that doesn't mean that if you're on your knees that there's no way out and that you'll never rise above. You will. And I'm going to show you how. I'm going to show you how, amidst your pain, that there are tools and ways of thinking that will see you move through those challenges with more grace, with more confidence, with more belief in a future ahead that's not so painful. So I think what's needed, and you're great at this too, Rebecca, and this, I love and respect this about you, is as leaders, like, we've got to tell the truth. And I think in being vulnerable and being willing to share our struggles, it gives other people hope that it really is possible for them, because there are people that look like they live the perfect life. And let me tell all of you, they don't. I don't know about you, but growing up, I used to always think, all these other families are all so perfect. Like, what's wrong with mine? But the fact of the matter is, years down the line, you realize that each of those families were dealing with their own struggles, but nobody spoke about it. So it made me feel really alone. My anxiety, my OCD as a college student, no one ever spoke about anxiety or fear or OCD. Why am I flicking lights on and off for an hour straight? Nobody spoke about it. And therefore, I felt so alone. And I felt like a crazy person. And that almost led to me taking my own life. But when I go out and I speak about these things, people realize, oh, I'm not alone in this.
I'm not alone. Right. I'm just empathizing with a lot of what you're sharing right now, too, because, one of the things that I really like, and I know that you will be delivering in this book, is that your adversities can be your gift. And talking about the OCD and the anxiety, I've struggled with that, and, ADHD as a result of a lot of trauma, losing both my parents, raising a blended family, having high performance jobs, and getting orphaned, so to speak, at 35 years old was a tremendous pill to swallow. It took a lot to overcome that. And it did literally bring me to my knees. I fell to the bathroom floor, and the only place I had to go was up. And that's when I called out to God, universe, help me. I can't do tomorrow the same way I'm doing today. And I think that's like one piece that I really resonate with about your work, is that you meet people where they are, and you have a very natural gift about doing that. One of the questions I'd like to ask you, like going down that road, is what are some other things that you had to overcome to really get to a point where you felt like you had a formula to write this book and to share with other people?
Well, I didn't know I had a formula until I sat down to write it. And I think that's why this book was so therapeutic, because in it, I found my formula, and it was obvious what the formula was. But I didn't know that. And none of us really know our formulas. In the book, I'm encouraging you to look at, how did you overcome that really deep struggle? Because here you are today, and you've done all these amazing things. Here you are today. How did you overcome that? Because what we forget when we're in it, when we're in the struggle, is we forget that we've been there before. Maybe it didn't look the same, but we've been there before.
Yes.
So my process was, let me go back there and think about how did I get through that? So I'll give you an example. My father, so when I was 23 years old and I'd been battling this anxiety, this depression, but I finally kind of took ownership of it and said that if I want to feel better, it's up to me. It's up to me to focus on what I want versus what I'm trying to avoid and don't want to have happen. It's up to me to focus on what I have versus what I don't have. It's up to me to focus on everything that's right versus everything that's wrong. And it's up to me to focus on what I can control. And that is my own experience of life in every single moment. So I started taking ownership, and this was shifting. This brought me out of my depression because finally I'm focusing on things that actually gave me energy versus robbed me of it. And in that place, I found out that I was gay, which was a tough pill to swallow because it's like, oh my God, this is not good in that day and age. But on the other side of that, I was like, I'm just happy that I know who I am. Like, I didn't know who I was, so wrapped up in my fear and anxiety. I didn't even know who I was. At least now I know who I am and I can build a relationship with me. But when my dad found out, we grew up in a family that was just not okay. And he cried and begged me to tell him that it wasn't true. And I wasn't willing to abandon myself in that moment. So I asked him to please just love me anyway. I'm still the same me. It doesn't matter that I'm gay. Yeah. But he, in that moment, hung up the phone. I didn't talk to him for 2 years. And in that, rejection, he was my everything. He was like my best friend. He was my hero. In that moment, the story he was telling me by cutting me out of his life is that because I am who I am, I'm not lovable. I'm not worthy of his love. I'm just going to be miserable. I'll never be a success. I'll never belong. But I was not willing to live that story. And again, in the moment, I'm not thinking all of this. It's going back and it's reflecting in that, like, I wasn't willing to have that be my life. So I had to instead tell myself a different story that I didn't necessarily believe at that point in time. But the story I was going to tell myself is that if I can just be me in this lifetime, just be all of who I am, maybe I wanted my dad's love, but I'll be able to tap into my power, my strength. I'll be able to live the life that I deserve, but I just need to make this okay. Maybe being gay is my superpower. And so I didn't believe it, but I needed to be that person that did. What would she do? Well, number one, she would take on this impossible goal. I'd been a 3-sport athlete at Brown University. I was a field hockey, ice hockey, and lacrosse player. But I fell in love with triathlon, watching a friend do a race. And I thought, my God, what an amazing way to find myself, to develop a trust, a respect, an appreciation for me. So, but I didn't know how to swim, and I'm 23 years old.
That's kind of funny.
I watch her do the race, and I'm like, I'm going to do this. I do my first race. I come in dead last. Like, people laughed at me, yelled at me like I was just a horror on the course. But I thought, if I can, you know what? I want to be the best in the world in this sport one day, which was ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. My mom cried when I told her because she thought my daughter's gone insane.
She's lost her mind.
But I was on a desperate mission to prove to myself that even as a gay woman, I could achieve something that I thought was spectacular. And that meant going from not being able to swim to at least putting everything I had into trying to become as good as I could be in the sport. I was on a desperate mission to prove that I could inspire other people, even though I'm gay, to prove that I could love myself, even though I'm gay, and to prove that one day I could actually live a life that I love and be loved by another. So that became my why. And so in this, to go back to the lesson, what was the lesson in it? Well, it's in those moments where you can tell yourself a story. Even my first race, I come in dead last. I could have said, you know what? I'm 23. I can't swim. I just came in dead last. I can't do a triathlon. No matter how I love it, I can't do it. How many of us do that? Can't do it. Not willing to live that story. So what story do you want to live? Because you get to go first in deciding what story you want to live. And I wanted to one day become the best in the world in this sport that I loved. What would she do? Well, she would train like a professional athlete. Before work, during lunch hour, after work, she would get a coach. She would model the very best athlete. She'd immerse herself. What would she, the one that's going to be the best in the world, what would she know? She would know that if I just show up and lean in every single day, I'm going to make progress. And one day I'll be able to do this. What would she believe? She would believe that it's possible. How would she define success and failure? Well, success is progress, and failure, you're learning. And when you learn, you grow, and that's progress too.
I
So
love that.
we must live the story you want to live, even if it doesn't feel real to you. Find the truth in it. The truth in that story was that, you know what? I had great work ethic. I was willing to fall on my face and fail and get back up again. I was willing to see failure as learning. I was willing to dedicate my life to it. And those things, yeah, somehow, some way, that's going to move me forward towards what I want. You must write the story that you want to live and then become that person by conditioning that story. What would she do? What would she know? What actions would she take? What would she believe? And suddenly you become that person that can live the story you want to live. But it takes your active participation, your commitment, and everything you have. So if you want it bad enough, you can do it. I am no different to you.
I love that message so much. And I wish I had your book that you're about ready to release in my hands back in 2013, 2014, because we all have different stories, as you were saying. But, you know, when my dad passed away, my mom passed away when I was 23. She was only 46 of medication overdose. And then my dad passed away from medication withdrawal. So I had this story in my head that like I wasn't worth them prioritizing themselves. And it made me feel unloved and unwanted. And very similarly, I didn't know how to do the thing that I did, but I leaned into myself and I was like, well, I know that I have kids and I don't want them to feel that I wasn't willing to prioritize myself. And I don't want them to feel the pain of being orphaned. So I got to get my shit together, for lack of a better word, after I spent a little bit of time in depression. But there is a power within us that is so resilient that if we can, like you said, begin to change that story and give ourselves a different narrative. And I love that you said, like, what would that person do? Right? Because I didn't know that's what I was doing, but I had a similar thing. I was like, well, what would a person who loved herself do? Like, oh, she'd get up every day and she'd work out or whatever those.
Yeah.
And I had to just keep like that as my North Star and kind of rinse and repeat. And then one day I'm like, oh, I love myself again. And it gave me so much more. Like, I feel like this is the energy I get from you. I feel like it comes out from like your heart center. And I feel that it does that when you get to a certain place in your healing journey. So I want to give it back to you, but I am just so excited that you went through this process, wrote this book. And for any of the listeners out there, if you are struggling in whatever you're struggling with, the name of the book is perfect. There is a way, you know, you can find a way through anything. So Siri, what would you like to kind of share off my share?
Well, first of all, thank you for sharing that. And I guess the biggest thing is like, show up and live your life as a person you want to be. Okay. Like sometimes we're not our best selves. We're going through stress. We're having trouble with a relationship. Maybe we're struggling at work, whatever it is. The best way out of that is to show up and live your life as if you're already the person you want to be. The one that's living the life she or he wants to live, the one that embodies all the values that perhaps you haven't been living in alignment with, but you want to, because you know if you do, you're going to be happy. At first, it's going to feel super uncomfortable because you're stuck in this pattern, whatever it is, of focusing on everything that's wrong and being judgmental and harsh on yourself and all of this stuff. It's going to feel awkward and weird and untrue to suddenly be this person that loves herself and is advocating for herself and believing in her future and this amazing life she can live. But the pain and discomfort of leaning into something that doesn't feel true to you is so much less than the pain of staying where you are. The pain of continuing to live a story that is not serving you, a story that's causing you pain, a story that's keeping you from everything that you want. And here's the thing, nobody's going to come in and fix that for you. So this work has to be done within you. And so this book is showing you exactly how to do that. And I'll share the way I did with my story, but it's also going to guide you to take your own story and exactly where you are and to know how to do what I did, but in your own way. So I think that's just so important.
So one thing I'd like to ask you, because we've talked about like kind of resetting our stories and striving to be that person that we want to be, but let's talk about what it feels like when you first start hitting those goals or those milestones, when you first start realizing you're becoming that person you sought out to be. Like, I'd love for you to tell the listeners a little bit about that part of the journey. Like, what does it feel like when you're starting to make that transformation?
Well, I'm going to be totally real about it. It feels amazing, but it also riddled with a conversation in your mind of, is this real? Is this true? Is this me? Is it a fluke? Is it? So, I mean,
Do I
yeah,
deserve
I want to
this?
say it's just roses and I became a world champion and it was so fabulous. But like, you will never
I love the
be
realness.
fully free of your self-doubt. But what changes is that you're going to hear that voice still, but you will have a keen awareness because you've been conditioning this to say, you know what, there's that voice again. And you held me back for way too long and you really made me suffer. So I hear you, but I'm going to remind myself of the truth. Okay. So for example, I get sick, really, really sick, and I'm in hospital. And I've got very little chance of surviving this. Now, I could sit there and tell myself the story. My God, I've got a 5% chance and I'm so sick. I'm so weak. I'm so terrified. I could keep telling myself that, but I hear that. And thank God, because I do this all day, every day in my life, I can recognize it and say, you know what? That voice is not going to see me surviving this. So I can't afford to listen to you. And instead, I'm going to do what I know is going to help me, which is change the channel to gratitude. What can I appreciate? I've got great doctors. I've got an umbilical cord donor and my sister that are going to try and give me life. I have a family that's supporting me. What else can I focus on? Well, I can focus on, instead of all my doubts and stacking those doubts, I'm going to stack my proof. Proof of the times where when I wanted to become the best in the world in triathlon and I didn't know how to swim and I sucked and I came in dead last and I failed over and over again. Well, God, 8 years later, I actually became the world champion and the number one triathlete in the world. And there's a photo of it. I don't know if your listeners are watching, but so I had this poster in my hospital room and it reminded me that what seems impossible is really possible. It reminded me it was proof of who I am and what I have inside of me. Now, we all have proof of that. So the thing is, you are always going to hear that voice that wants to take you back into that doubt, that fear. It's going to want to hold you back because it's trying to protect you. But there comes a time when you have to just build your awareness and say, you know what? I'm not going to do that. You're tempting me. I hear you. But this time, you know what? If it's a voice outside your door that's trying to say, you can't do this. Oh my God, you don't have what it takes. Put down the shades, lock the windows, lock the door, call the police and have them take that voice away because you cannot afford to listen to it. It is not going to take you where you want to go. It's going to take you further away from everything you want. So it's in the awareness is everything, because from that space, we can then recognize the lies. And in that moment, advocate for ourselves enough to say, you know what, I'm going to tell myself the truth right now. And the truth is that, I'm at that time, I'm fighting this disease and it's going to be really hard. But I know that I can find a way through it because I've got proof, and I'm going to redirect my focus in as many moments as possible to focus on things that give me energy, that give me hope, versus focusing on what makes me feel hopeless, weak, and like there's no chance.
Yeah. I love what you're saying so much because it's so easy to get stuck in that negative narrative. I actually named my inner mean girl, and I mean like inner mean girl to myself. Her name's Nadine. I don't know when my friends named her. It just came like that, but I've had to learn to turn her down because she will keep me stuck. And then, like, to your point, when you already have been through enough life adversity that you struggle with things like anxiety, that voice only amplifies those things. So I love that you've spent, because even for the listeners right now, if you apply what Siri is saying and you have that awareness and you start paying attention to your narratives, you can start this work today. We get that choice every moment to restart.
And then here's the beauty. So you asked for what did it feel like when you're suddenly doing these things you dream of. Here's the good part, guys. When you have that awareness and you know how to mute the voice that is trying to take away all your joy, the number one thing you must do is be present. Be present to the magic of every moment. Be present when something goes well. Don't just say, oh, that was cool. Okay, now what's next? Or like not celebrate it. You need to celebrate your wins. You need to be present to the magic of the moment. And this is one of the most beautiful gifts from going through what I went through with cancer, is that every moment, every breath is this miracle, is this gift. And oftentimes I could be in the midst of a stressful day, but all I have to do is put my hand on my heart and get present in the moment and think, wow, I'm alive. I get to live this life. I get to do these things. I just wrote this book. It's going to be released in June. It feels like it's my life's work. Like, how amazing is this? Like, I want you to be present to the good. I want you to be present in that moment with your partner, that moment with your child, where you're having a good time together. Don't just have the good time, but sit and be present with, wow, this is really cool. This is really special. And I want you to start stacking those moments where you can truly, when times are good and when you're achieving your goals, celebrate it. Be present, be grateful, enjoy it, embrace it. And the way to do that is first to move yourself away from those voices that are trying to take that away from you. Don't allow it, shut them down, get present, and truly embrace the magic of this life.
Wow. Well, this is the Empowered Half Hour, and I just got the goosebumps and butterflies, and I think you just brought me there, Siri.
Well, that makes me super happy. And all I want is to be able to help bring some love and light and kindness into the world and hope and inspiration. And if I've been able to do that in some small way today, then that just means everything.
Yeah, I know you have. Well, I want to help get this book into our listeners' hands. So go ahead if you can and share where they can buy your book and how they can follow you.
Well, first of all, buying the book, Finding a Way, Taking the Impossible and Making It Possible. My greatest mentor, Tony Robbins, wrote the foreword. $1 of every book goes to Feeding America, so also a very good cause. Awesome. And Tony Robbins is going to match that dollar. So for every book sold, a family will be fed. I would love for you to buy your book before it launches on June 20th. You can do that on Amazon, Barnes & Noble. Get your copy today. If at some point you want a signature, you send it my way. I can make that happen. But I hope that this book will not only be a gift to you when you read it the first time, but I hope it can be somewhat of a manual for you to go back to at different stages in your life. It means everything to me. Becca, thank you for acknowledging it here. I hope you love it. Please write me. I am on Instagram at Siri Lindley, Facebook, Siri Lindley, Twitter at Siri Lindley. I want to hear your thoughts when you read it. I want to answer your questions. Stay in touch. Let me know. I'm so excited to share this with you.
I am so excited for this book to go out in the world, and I'm so grateful and happy for you to join the Empowered Half Hour. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you, Becca. Thank you, everybody. So much love to you all. Thanks, Becca.
You're welcome.